Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Author Showcase, the podcast where we showcase published authors, bloggers. We do video blogs. We got you. If you are a publisher, we got you too. And so we're just going to jump right into it. We got Linwood Jackson Jr., author, poet, and philosopher. His work revolves around personal and devotional benevolence to self and how much kindness inevitably branch out, extending towards others, inspiring others to know the same experience. He is a pioneer in his own right, as there is no other writer, lecturer, pastor, or author articulating the philosophy that he presents. And I really want to hear some of that philosophy, that you got. I hope you're ready to spill some knowledge on us tonight.
on the spot.
All right, so uh, tell us a little bit about who you are and what kind of literary works that you got out
Yeah, sure. Linwood Jackson. I have published 8 books. They all revolve around inward mental devotional growth and development, but they all do it on different facets. Example being, I published a book of poetry, and then I recently just published a fantasy fiction novel. And then all of my other books are just philosophically based on the scriptures of the Bible, philosophy of mental and inward devotion, centering on the framework of the the crucifixion, and not looking at it as in the traditional religious scope, looking at it as how the Bible breaks it down. And if the Bible breaking it down is, although we see a physical individual crucified, it's according to the scriptures and according to the philosophy within the Bible, it's really not a physical man we should be thinking as, looking at. That body represents something figurative. It represents a specific religious philosophy. And the crucifixion of that body means the crucifixion of that philosophy. And the crucifixion of that philosophy means that there is a better way or a better approach to how we should handle ourselves devotionally or spiritually, and even as a human being. And that's really what my books are about. It's getting to how the Bible, as opposed to traditional religious thought and theory, discusses how we should handle ourselves as human beings. Just getting to that point that the scriptures articulate is our spirituality, our devotional conversation. It reflects and reforms our human being and who we are as a person, to where that then our human being as a person can reflect on how we carry ourselves devotionally. A repetitive cycle of growth, both as a human being and as a devotional or spiritual creature. And that's really the rundown of it.
What would you say your audience is? Who is the audience that you
That's a
are capturing?
that's a ridiculously good question, because when I first started out writing, my audience fully intended were individuals in seminary, and still are individuals in seminary, individuals going through training. The next book that I'm publishing, called A Faith That Works, is specifically for individuals in seminary training, to where I'm getting a lot of feedback from pastors, especially, and from individuals sitting in churches that church isn't really doing it for them anymore. And pastors are also having their own thing that they have to say. And so I'm noticing that there's a lacking in the training of pastors. And in this book of Faith That Works, it talks about the need to empathize with the individuals that are listening to us as pastors, as ministers, as spiritual leaders, as inspirational, speakers or motivational, just empathizing with the speakers, with the people that listen to us, and allowing that empathy to do something, to spark something within, so that the person can then start caring for themselves in a way that they can start taking responsibility for themselves. So my audience, it has always been the pastors or the trained in seminary or the graduates. But what I'm noticing is that people that are reaching out to me are individuals that are looking to better their devotional experience or their spiritual experience from their current or previous denomination. So I'm getting a lot of audience or thought or response or email or phone calls from people that are seeing that religion has, in a sense, hurt them mentally, inwardly, emotionally, and as a human being, it has sort of degraded them. And yet they understand that there's something more than what they have traditionally gone through. And when they hear me speak, they reach out to me and they let me know that they hear something that connects with them. And so they want to know how they can allow their experience, as tragic as it may seem on the surface, how they can go under the surface and find that real, genuine experience that led them to where they need to be and to where they are, to then continue without needing the crutch of religious tradition or religious theory and experiencing for themselves as human beings. So I've over the years gained different audiences that I'm writing for and that hear me speaking to them. One of them being pastors, and the next being individuals sitting in churches that are saying, church is actually hurting me. My religion has actually hurt me. My religious belief has done nothing for me. Yet I know there's something more to it and me, and I would like to know more about it. So those two put in one are actually who I'm writing for.
I'm glad you mentioned that because I don't know if you've been following social media lately, but we get a lot of threads and a lot of posts, from individuals and including preachers that's saying, they're saying, hey, I'm not really getting anything out of church, or
It's
the
real.
church has hurt me, and
It's real.
we're finding out that people, they're leaving the church in drums,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
they're some have left Christianity altogether. Some
Yeah.
people are rejecting what they call organized religion. It's a real
Yeah.
big problem. And also too, we're finding out that you have a lot of overworked and overwhelmed pastors.
Yep.
That some of them fall into deep depression. They end up leaving their posts.
It's true.
So, what do you think is causing all of this?
It stems from, we're living in an age, right? We're living in an age and we're living in a time where science is continually excelling. It doesn't even matter if it's good or legitimate. Every year there's something new that some sort of science or branch of science is excelling in, and it's being publicized and it's out there and people can gravitate to it. People can take it and amend it, or take it and reject it. But when it comes to the religious philosophy, it's going nowhere and it has gone nowhere. And we're living in an age where the stories of old, the beliefs of mothers and fathers, they're not doing anything for this no attention span generation that we have. And so if there's going to be no development, and my interactions with individuals and also with pastors is that there's something that's missing in the attention, the manners and the methods of old of gaining attraction for the theories that are being taught. They're really not doing anything in this day and age. And the more I do speak and the more I do articulate what the context or the nature within the scriptures are, I'm finding that there's more fascination in understanding what the context is, as opposed to being told what the context is and to just believe on that. So what I'm seeing is that there's a lot of people out there that really care about actually knowing, not just for the sake of knowing, but for knowing for the sake of amending their own experience. They want to control their own experience. They don't want their experience controlled for them. And I think that's what the issue is. I think that's what the problem is that we're living in an age where everything's available to us at a fingertip, at a touch. We're living at an age where we're no longer able to have our thoughts controlled because of the so many of opinions that are out there. We're able to hear various opinions, and yet the same spiel, the same opinion, the same theory, the same everything connected to religion, it hasn't changed and it hasn't grown, and it's becoming tired to a generation that has now been trained to think zero point 0.5 seconds about anything or something. And if there's not enough substance, the attention span isn't going to be there. And just the age that we're living in, the story, and it's just not making enough sense anymore, to the point where, like you say, people are actually leaving their churches. I have people messaging me that would like to talk with me, about how their church is damaging them, but at the same time, while their church is damaging them, they understand that there's a real reason for why they are believing what they believe, and they want to know what that belief is. They want to investigate that belief. They want to get to the crux of why they hold to that belief and why they believe that their traditional understanding doesn't cater to it. So
Is, is,
while
is that based on, like, for example, they want to investigate the scriptures?
it's the whole thing, they want to investigate the scriptures, but more than that, they want themselves at the center of the investigation. So they want the material that they're uncovering to not simply just be, okay, this is a belief, I'm going to go to church and just worship this belief. They actually want an understanding to where they can honor the understanding. The understanding can be what they serve on a daily basis. And that's the flip.
So it's kind of like, how can I, so is it kind of like, how can I have a relationship with someone if I don't know who that person truly is?
Exactly.
It's kind of like that. And I think that a lot of preachers have, they have not gotten to that point to where they can, like, really, expound on that.
Exactly.
Another thing I want to point out, too, is that a lot of pastors do not make the scriptures relevant to what's going on now, and they're not making it relevant to a particular individual, especially our young people. Um, there's no opportunities for them, in church. And when they do come to church, I notice that, they're being judged, they're being condemned. I mean, who wants to go to a church that in which all they do is condemning and, and harshly judging? That's not what the church was designed,
Yeah.
for. If you read in scripture, you never, in the early church, you never run across that. Everyone, everyone was equal. There's even one point in Acts to where, everyone gave what they had. They laid it before the altar, and everyone, left with what they need. We have definitely gotten away, from that. Um, most churches, don't even engage in the community in which they reside at, yet alone cater to the needs of the people that supposedly are members,
Yeah.
of the church. And also is that judgmental condemnation piece. I think that's the main reason, why people are saying, I've been hurt by the church. I don't want to go to church anymore. I mean, I don't even want to engage in Christianity anymore, or what they call organized religion. I mean, what is your
Yeah.
thought?
It's the truth. It just goes down to, as you say, the early church. One of the things that stand out to me as you said that is they remained one, unified by the doctrines, by the apostles' doctrine and fellowship. So at this point in time, when you think about church, all you think about is fellowship. Like, it's just a feeling. I'm going to go to church and I need to feel right. And I'm going to go and I'm going to leave and I'm going to feel right. And then the rest of the day, who knows how you spend the rest of the day because you've already felt right. But attached to that fellowship, there's also doctrine. So it's not just about going to church and feeling right, feeling as if I'm serving God, or feeling a feeling that's a lie. You need to apply with feeling knowledge, with feeling wisdom, with feeling doctrine, and that's what's missing.
Mhm.
It's all about the feeling of a religion or of being accepted by a divine eye, as opposed to actually relating to that feeling in a conscious sense and growing closer to what you would take as a divine eye realistically. So what I'm noticing is that when I do speak to different individuals, the harm is more along the lines of a failure to doctrinally understand. And then in that sense, my religion or my tradition is taking advantage of my mind because I don't understand, and it's giving me something that I can understand is not legitimately enough. It's not enough. It's not enough. And yet I'm being told it's enough. But I understand that I should be here for the sake of understanding more than what I think I know, but I'm not getting it. So you're at a stall mark when you're resting on traditional lore, or when you're resting on the traditional subscription to what you should be feeling when you enter into church. The missing point is fellowship plus that doctrine. That's what carries the personal church, because we have a temple within. If that's not being fed, then it's just all down from there. That's
Yeah,
yeah,
it's funny that you mentioned that, because now you have all these type of movements, like the word of faith movement, the charismatic movement,
true, true.
the new apostolic movement, and then you have this
Yeah,
evangelical Christians, then you have these religious zealots, uh and then you have the prosperity gospel, where these people, are saying, live your best life now. You know,
yeah.
I'm supposed to be rich. Show me anywhere in the Bible, where God intended us to be rich. I mean, I don't see that anywhere. Like, for example, Joyce Myers, would read, a greeting for Paul, that says that, I want you to prosper in every way, even as your soul prosper. And she interpreted that as saying that, God intended me to be rich. He intended for me to be healthy. And then you have and then there's another instance too, where Stephen Frick, if I'm pronouncing his name correctly, he believed in the little God's doctrine, and he declares himself to be God Almighty.
Jeez.
That you got people, that are calling themselves I am.
There's beliefs out there. Yep.
I mean, it is crazy. Okay, and let's not forget about uh the uh the Hebrew Israelite.
Yeah.
Let's not forget, they have some off the wall, kind of stuff. They mostly talk about, like the different laws. There are 632 laws that was observed by the Israelites in the Old Testament. And one of those laws was tithing. And this is one of the areas where pastors would beat people in the head, until they have an injury so big that they probably cannot, recover from it. They beat them in the head. They say, if you don't give your 10%, you're gonna be cursed with a curse. And I'm like, bro, we're no longer under that law.
It's very true.
That's not, there is nowhere in the New Testament, in the early church, that practice tithe.
And that goes
No,
back to
no,
the
no, no, nowhere in the
it's
New
true.
Testament. Nowhere.
Galatians 3:13, we are redeemed from the curse of the law.
Right.
And
So,
that's where it comes down to.
and it also talks about the fact that the law is a curse to us, that we are not capable of fulfilling the law. That's one of the reasons why Christ came. Yeah, he was the only, not only that he died on the cross for our sins, but he was the only one capable, of fulfilling the law. Why? He said, okay, I have not come to destroy the law, but I have come to fulfill the law. Why do you think he said that? Because he was the only one that was able to fulfill the law. Now, mind for you, during Jesus's earthly ministry, there was no New Testament. So basically, they were still under the law. Even when Jesus in human form walked the earth and had his earthly ministry, Israel was still, under the law, but after, the work was done and, the veil was broke, the veil ripped in half, and he said that it was done, that means that he had fulfilled the law, and we're no longer, not only that we're no longer under the law, but we don't have to have, a priest to go before us, to go before God and and confess our sins so that God can forgive us. We're able to do that ourselves through prayer. So what we're seeing here is an undermining of the gospel, period. With all these other movements, that I'm talking about, the prosperity gospel, the word of faith movement, the little gods, doctrine, all of that is not scripture. I mean, I'm just really baffled at, the amount of people, that believe in this stuff. And then on the other side of that, that coin, uh, people saying, I don't have anything to do with this. I'm gone. I'm out. And they end up, leaving the church. I mean, what do you have to say about some of the stuff I just mentioned, for starters? And that's the first question. The second question is, uh, any word of advice, for someone who has been hurt
Yeah.
by the church or Christianity in general, to make them, want to say, I don't want to have anything to do with Christianity anymore.
Yeah. Your first touch on your first question. It's the science behind the gospels is also interesting because each one of them, Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, there's a different philosophy of a different character called Jesus. So there are four different Jesuses in each one of those gospels. The way that it's written and the way that it's constructed, it's four different perspectives of this of a central figure. And the way I like to break
Right.
it down is, I feel like there's a underlying central philosophy within them when you can understand the context and language of them. But each one of them have their own specific detail. Like, for example, in the book of John, that which is of the flesh is flesh, that which is of the spirit is spirit. When it comes to the the aspect of Galatians 3:13 being redeemed from the law, that's the controversy at hand, is the way that Paul articulates how we should understand this doctrine is that Paul's quoting Moses that says, he that hangs on a tree is accursed of God. So according to Moses and according to the Bible, the one that is hanged on a tree or that is crucified on the cross is naturally and innately and altogether accursed of God. So the individual that is crucified, this is an individual that we or any Christian should look at as being accursed of God. No worth, no value, no nothing. This is an individual accursed of God. If we're going to take the Bible as a literal thing, but that's not what the apostles took it further. So the apostles, Paul in that Galatians chapter 3 quotes that quote from Deuteronomy because it's true. He that is cursed, he that is hanged is accursed of God. If we're going to believe that this individual crucified is a savior, well, according to the Bible, we're wrong.
Right.
And the individual,
Because
exactly.
Jesus bore the sins of the world. You
And
know,
so,
God had to, being God Almighty, he had to, there is a penalty, for that sin. And because he bore the sins of the world, he is considered to be, a curse. So we can definitely take that literally. But the whole theme of, the book of John is salvation. In Matthew, Luke, and John, there's a different theme. Just like you said, there's a different philosophy in each one of these books. And each one of these books talks about, a different thing, a different characteristic or attributes, of Christ. And that each one of the writers, basically had their own account of philosophy of, who Jesus was. Uh, but they all made up of, that one entity or deity. You know, he just have a different attributes, but everybody did not talk about the same attributes. And each one of these books talks about a different set of attributes, a different set of, and had a different set of philosophy. Each one of these books, but nevertheless, they were talking about the same person. Is that accurate?
Yeah, they're talking about their own interpretation of the same person. That is the thing. Their own interpretation of the same person. Like for example, you have um Isaiah telling us that it is in Galilee where the individual is supposed to be born, but Matthew and Luke would have us understand that he's born in Bethlehem and then somehow stationed in Galilee after. And then where you have John and Mark really not stating any sort of general birth location or giving a birth story, because to those authors, it clearly doesn't matter. They initially start their story from Galilee, assuming that he's from there. So each book has its own take on its own interpretation of what they believe the figure was. And so what I was just saying is that the way that the apostles broke it down, they didn't just stick to the literal. They actually took that body as representing something that was not accursed, and they took that body as representing a religious philosophy. And again, this is Paul, Ephesians 2:15, that philosophy representing the structure of the religious philosophy of Moses, which is righteousness by the accomplishment of deeds and such. With this
So let's
crucified,
so let's go back to the point where, stay with me, Rob. Now
yeah,
imagine
yeah,
imagine that you are at the Last Supper, and the Last Supper of Christ being on earth, and he broke the bread. He said, eat, take this bread. It represents my body, which is broken, for you. Does that have any relation to what you mentioned earlier?
most definitely. That in and of itself is a religious law. And and that's a very good point, because each one of these gospels has a specific opinion about what they believe the Jewish Christian movement should be, or what the, if we're going to go back in time, what the Ebionite movement should be. And should this movement be attached to the religious laws of the Jews, or should they allow this individual Messiah to run his own sort of thing, or not disrespecting, but at the same time having his own form of worship and service? And so there are certain books where there's certain things left out, or there's certain things not mentioned. And it has to do with a lot of the fact of the belief that the authors, through their penmanship, held. If you go to the book of Luke, for example, the first 5 verses of the first chapter of Luke, Luke tells us that at that point in time, there are different individuals writing their own perspectives of the story that they have come to believe in. And what they've done, by the time you get to Luke, there are about, I'm going to be generous here, maybe 100 or a little bit more manuscripts of this individual story. And what they've done is they've taken these manuscripts, put them on top of each other, and put them side by side, and have taken out and replaced, and have taken out and replaced, to create new stories about this one character. An example is in the book of John, where if you had to strategically look at the layout of this one book in John chapter 11, it says Mary and Martha, but in the original context, or in the original manuscript, it was Mary and Mary. You go to the book of Mark, Mark is only 9 verses in the last chapter, but there were an additional number of verses added to that in the ADs. So what I'm saying is that these manuscripts are in relation to the individual that is a central figure, not literally. They all have a take, yes, on this one figure, but this one figure at the same time is being decoded according to their belief of how he should be viewed and how others should be honoring him. And what I was saying about that is that the apostles, when they were explaining the benefit of the crucifixion, they went beyond looking at that body as a physical thing to conquer physical sins and such. Because if the blood of beasts and animals couldn't conquer any sins, what good is a human sacrifice to do the same? This is the philosophy of the apostles.
So
And
they
then,
was trying to explain that that something was needed, more
exactly,
powerful than than
exactly,
an animal sacrifice, which in the New Testament, that was sufficient. And then they end up building a tabernacle, for God to, dwell in. Whereas, now we're the tabernacle.
exactly. It is
God lives
within, and
God lives in us.
that's why he said the kingdom of God is within.
Hmm.
And that term kingdom is not actually kingdom as in home or castle. It is actually a demonstration, and the act is within. And that's really what I was just getting at with everything that you were saying in response, is that as opposed to looking at something as a physical thing, the man himself, when he was on earth, did not walk around saying that he was this or he was that. In the original context, he says, I am the light of the world and such. But in the manuscript, that I isn't personal. That I is in reference to my words. So he's saying my words are the light of the world. If you take it back and just look at it strategically, and it goes to the work that is supposed to occur within, is the fulfilling of the new covenant, which is I will write my law in their inward parts, and in their hearts will they know me. That's the original new covenant promise.
Right.
The original new covenant promise was not having anything to do with a demigod or God man doing what he does. The misinterpretation came as the apostles began to teach, and then mixed in with the age and the Hellenization of the times, things began to take on a life of their own, and what the apostles originally taught became forgotten, and what we now know became what we now know. So what I would say to your second question about individuals that are having problems struggling with the Christian religion is that yes, you are not crazy, but with what you know, take what you know and do not disregard the scriptures for an interpretation that human beings have put on them. So what you know, keep what you know and bring what you know to the scriptures and just examine it to understand its realness, which is what I tell everybody.
Now, going back to, the first question, you mentioned I,
Yeah.
was a substitute for the words that Jesus, was saying. Can that be related to John 1:1 when it says, in the beginning was the word, and the word was, with God, and the word was God? Is there any relation to that?
That relation goes a lot deeper because the book of John has a lot of Greek philosophy within it. And in the natural language that is written in the beginning was the word, and the word was with God, and the word was God. That term word translates to logos. And that word logos is an entity of itself in Greek mythology. Logos is actually translated to, or can be translated or seen as Zeus, which is why in the Greek, there's no J in Jesus. It is Ieus, and the word separated in the Greek, in English, translates to praise Zeus, because sus is slang in the Greek language for Zeus. So all of that in the beginning has a lot to do with Greek philosophy, has a lot to do with the understanding of what is called logos, or the immanent or immeasurable omnipotence that controls the dictated thoughts of God. That's what logos is. The dictated thoughts of God made manifest, and the controlling, and in Greek mythology, that's Zeus. So there is a lot of language that we, just taking the Bible and reading it, don't naturally understand. We take it and read it as it is. but to the individuals that wrote this, there is a reason behind every single word. And I think that goes back to what you were saying about churches, how there's people leaving church and really not finding anything in it for them. I think to touch back on that is it's because of the language, the language. There's people that know that there's more to what's being said and they're not being fed properly. So they're not being fed properly, they're not getting the proper digestion. And in the age that we live in, with attention span being nothing, with no proper digestion of what's being given and with not being fed, nobody wants to hang around because there's no proper doctrine. And that touches back onto the spirit of that early movement, where it was not just fellowship, it was doctrine and fellowship. So I
Yeah,
think that
the early church really placed a heavy emphasis on uh on doctrine. In fact,
they
the Bible
did.
says it talks about the fact that if you're not preaching what was being taught by the apostles,
Yeah.
you're preaching another gospel.
Yep.
And that's what's going on with the prosperity movement, the word of faith movement, the charismatic movement, the new word apostolic. They're not, they are preaching,
Um,
they're preaching another gospel.
something
And
else.
and it's like really it's dangerous, it's damaging, the church, and they're saying that, this is what, God has given me. No,
Yeah.
no, 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 it's not. He says,
It's
no, it's not. And I think people are, they're not as stupid as I don't think
no,
these folks are
no,
not, they're not stupid as we think
no,
they are. They're not crazy.
no.
I think they see something, much deeper than I think that we can ever, realize. When John 4:1, it says, you know, don't believe every spirit, test the spirit by the spirit,
Mm,
that has a deeper meaning within itself. And I think that people, I think they're catching that more, than we ever, realize. Is more than just the lifestyle, of that minister. Is basically what's coming out
that's
of that
true.
minister's mouth.
That's what I've been noticing.
Mhm.
That's my
And
next book.
yeah, and I am noticing that, as well. And some of the stuff that you're mentioning, I can almost certainly guarantee it's not even being taught. It's not even
Yeah.
being mentioned.
Well, I've gone back and forth with religious journals. And it got to the point where the director of a specific a religious journal at a university said to me, you know what, we when it comes to us accepting and when it comes to you submitting or anyone submitting, we're not simply just looking for Bible. So these people aren't looking for Bible. They're not looking for Bible. They're looking for Bible plus psychology to explain Bible. They're looking for Bible plus biology to explain Bible. They're looking for Bible plus Plato to explain Bible. And that's the conflict. The conflict is that no no one is giving Bible. If I had to sit in front of anyone that knows, that say that they know Bible, and I had to actually speak and point by point go for and show everything that is there to their senses visually, and to have them handle the Bible and go point by point with me, it would not be recognized. It wouldn't be recognized because all we know and all we think to know and all we accept to know is the base understanding that we have given from by lore and from tradition. The philosophy, and I always like to tell anybody that reaches out to me whenever we begin to speak, is that the philosophy within the Bible, it is not a Christian philosophy. Christian is Western. The minds that wrote the Bible are Eastern. The minds that wrote the Bible are Eastern. That's something that needs to not be forgotten, because in this Western world, we're so consumed with the Western lifestyle that we think everything should be translated in a Western context. But when you enter into the Bible, the Western context absolutely stops. And the Syrian or the Eastern context or the Eastern philosophical mind of that Syrian mind that wrote the Bible, each one of those authors, the way that they interpret life, as you said it just right, like lifestyle, the way that they interpret being, the way that they interpret the definition of quote unquote God, it is not going to
Right.
be how we see it.
Right. Because they're basing on a Western standard and
Exactly.
not the
And
the
that's the
standard
problem.
from the area in which the Bible was written, which was
And that's
Hebrew,
the problem. Exactly.
Aramaic, and Greek.
That's the problem. I would say whole Greek is later on. The Aramaic, at least, is the primary. And it's from that philosophical standpoint, even probably even before that, that when we enter into the Bible, that matters a lot. That's like me talking to you, and it goes even what you were saying about the judgmental thing in church. That's like me talking to you, and even before you open up your mouth, I'm judging you by what you're going to say. And then when you do open up your mouth and speak, I'm still judging you because of what I assume you mean. When we do that to the Bible, we tarnish it like completely. When we our culture being Western culture being so self-centered, we take religion and we make it self-centered. Everything in
That's
it
what we got. That's why we got all
is
these. That's why we have all these different denominations like Baptist, Methodist,
self-centered.
Episcopalian. They're all, a Galatian, uh, which is also called the Church of England, the Greek Orthodox.
There's a lot.
All of those are westernized, supposedly, Christianity.
Well, Christianity is, I would say, a Western concept because it's Roman. It's underlying Roman, and Roman is quite Western. But the Eastern concept of it is, aside from that, when you get into the East, that's when everything flips. Eastern side of things is more thought-based, is more inward based. That's why you can hear and anyone can relate to the kingdom of God is within you. That's
Mhm.
why you can hear and relate to you desire truth in the inward parts, and in the hidden parts you shall make me to know wisdom. Psalms 51. When we hear these things, this is what draws us into Bible. When we're hearing things of a Greek nature, of deities and of gods and of bloods and of feasts and of this, to us in 2022, that's not going to be cool because we're seeing so much that is more real than that. But what I found is that when I'm able to take what is out there from a Western context and bring it into its correct landmark of the Eastern frame mind and get the Bible speaking for itself, that's when people are tuned in. That's when people sit down and listen. That's when people are able to reflect, because that's what it was. God is a spirit. So if we're going to take that to be true, John 4:24, that God is a spirit, why continually make a physical appearance or a physical philosophy out of something that not even God himself can relate to, not being flesh and blood?
Like,
And
for example, you had painters in the Western world, they would paint this depiction of, who Christ is. And I'm like,
mm,
that's not who he is.
mm,
I said, in fact, he's not even of a material substance. He's immaterial. He's spirit.
but that's culture though. That's the Western dogmatic culture. It
I mean,
hits. It hits.
that's
Yeah.
exactly what I'm getting at.
Yeah, it hits. Yeah.
And people, in this day and age had no problem. They had no problem saying that, no, this is not, that's not it. And I agree. That's why I don't want to have any, those type of pictures even
Mm,
in my own house. Because I know that's not who he, really is. When you go into the evangelical, circles, the and I'm just going to be real. The Christ that they're trying to, inhibit is not who he, really is. They do it in in art, they do it in music, they do it in their preaching, the whole 9 yards. And I'm looking at all that, and I'm like, y'all is wrong as two left shoes. That is not who Christ is. And I think, many people, especially those that are looking on the outside that don't particularly identify themselves, as Christians, like, this is not who he is.
Yeah.
This is not who he is. This is not who, he looked like. I mean, they're smarter than what we, give them credit for.
That's
But
just what's
I'm
there.
learning, and even in that, even in this conversation, I'm learning some things too. I mean, I don't have it all together.
Yeah.
I certainly don't have the Bible all together either.
Yeah.
But being here in this space, it kind of encouraged me and compelled me to, to not only read and study the Bible, but to have a different outtake, insight of what the Bible is, really saying, based on, you know, your responses. Um, and I think that this is really, this was God sent here, because I think that we're coming to a time to, that people are really, not only questioning people, but they're questioning this whole religious construct,
Mm.
that obviously has been, westernized, and they turn, this entity that we call Christ into something, that he's not. Is being taught in churches all across the country. And what, for the most part, what they're teaching is not who he really is. And people
It's
notice this, and they're like,
sure.
I don't want to have anything to do with that.
It's true. When you don't get the philosophy in there, when it's just all about appearances, it's just like, why? Why bother?
Because I think that, when we talk about philosophy, people, say, that's not a biblical concept. That's not,
Oh,
that's a secular thing. But we have to understand that when the writers, when they wrote the Bible,
exactly.
when they wrote the Bible,
They're coming from a
what they were
background.
saying was having a deeper meaning than what
Exactly.
we, take it as context. There had to have been some type of philosophy or deeper meaning
And
behind,
there is.
what they were saying,
There is.
and it was, a deeper saying, than what it was. And I think that the first thing that we have to understand in terms of context is what language was it written? And we know in Greek, Aramaic, in Hebrew, uh, and no one really talks about this, that they had their own philosophy.
And that's the main point that I bring out in everything I say. We can't lose sight of that, is that to erase their philosophy is like to erase them from history, which we have done.
And when we erase that, we pretty much, erase the true meaning of the gospel,
And invent something completely different. That's
which
crazy.
exactly what happened. That's why you got all these different movements.
Yeah.
That's why you got all these different movements, here, because, these folks, think that, I have the ultimate revelation of God, where that revelation was already given through the prophets and through the apostles, the foundation has already been laid.
It's there. You
Why
just have
are
to
why are we
understand.
trying to why are we trying to create a new foundation, which is
Exactly.
exactly what happened.
Unsatisfied. I think it goes back to the attention span. We have none, and so there has to be continually new things, but it's not in the same way as science is advancing and improving. We're 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 like devancing and deproving by every advancement.
Well, I'm gonna
It,
give you another example too. Now, the 400 years, all you history buffs, 400. This between the Old Testament and New Testament, it was like 400 years where historians said that no one heard from God. Right? That there was no spoken words from God. There was no revelation. None of that. So in that 400 years, you got all these other books. That came out. Other work. Saying that their writings were inspired by God because you know they was impatient. They didn't want to wait. But in actuality, you know, just like today, when there's no new revelation, from God before Christ, came to earth in human form, they pretty much had everything they need. The words that was given in the Old Testament at that particular time was all they needed. And you said so yourself. It was not satisfied. It was not satisfied, with what they had. They said, I'm missing something. No, you're not. No, you're not missing anything. You're just making up, whatever. You're just going along, to get along, and God's like, I'm not having that. You clearly don't understand, who I am. You don't even want to understand
that's the fact.
who I am. You just doing your own thing to satisfy, the man's curiosity to do his own thing. That's basically it. And we have been that way throughout when time began. We're never, we're never, what we have. Always, always have to have more instead of trying to understand, and being content with what we got. And I think people are beginning to see that. It was like, nah, there's got to be something. There's something wrong with this, and I can imagine that's part of the reason why, they're coming to you. Is that correct?
Exactly. That fits in perfectly to my service, to what's going on out here is the need of understanding more, not even doctrinally, but inwardly. There's a lacking, and when they come across my work, it's that lacking is finding some sort of resolution by what you're saying, and from what you're saying, I can understand that there's more to both me and my experience than what I've been trained to believe. So that ties in perfectly to it.
So that what they're is that what they're teaching in the seminaries versus,
No,
what you had told me?
no, nothing. That would be a whole nother thing of what goes on in the trained institutions.
Because I cannot imagine, goes on in these
Nobody can.
seminaries.
No, nobody can. It's not. It's really
I think
not.
that's overwhelming.
It. Yeah.
So is
It's
that some of the things that you get from people that, been to seminary or they graduated from seminary? And do some of them feel like, I'm not really prepared. I'm not really prepared to, to pastor or, or to minister.
Well, it's one of those things where I don't believe what I'm preaching. I've actually been told. So it's to that extreme. And then it's to the extreme of really not understanding, because again, what goes on in these institutions isn't the training on what is in the Bible, it's the training of what is believed to be in the Bible. And you can take that, and there's so many thoughts you could put with that, but it's not about what actually is, it's about what is believed. And a regurgitation from different voices of what is believed is what they're trained in. And by the time they come out, it's sort of like, I don't believe this. And that's where that's at sometimes.
So basically, they're saying that, either I'm preaching a lie or
Yeah, both.
I'm living a lie.
Yeah.
Yep, that's kind of deep right there. And I think that's probably the reason why you have a lot of pastors, they leave the pulpit.
Some leave. I've known some to just turn atheist. I've known some to turn to the religion of Satan. All of this due to what has been taught in the seminaries.
Is there anyone, um being, that I'm hearing this from you for the first time, uh is there anyone else out there that have that frame of mind? Is this something that definitely need to be taught in, the seminary, yet alone the churches?
Well, the name, well, just to give a, I guess, not to go off topic, but the name in and of itself, seminary, uh, comes from the word semen, to where the concept is the implantation of a specific seed that is inbred in priest and minister, going how far back. And that's basically what it's about the implementation of seed in thought and theory about a specific passage, chapter, or the book entirely, and framing one's thought about just that one thought, or that those various thoughts, having absolutely nothing to do with the book itself, but again about a specific belief about what that book is. And
Oh,
a number
wow.
of it, a number of individuals that I do know of that have gone through that training, they either come out as atheists, or they either come out as, and I'm speaking about seminary, whether Christian or seminary or the rabbinical schools, I've known both, and they come out as either atheists or religion of Satan, or discontent with what they have been taught, and angry.
Oh,
So
wow.
it's really different when you're into that world. It's sort of like, we have technology, we have phones, we have this, and we use them, but we don't really know what goes on with the creators of these phones, the opinions of the creators of these phones. We don't know their beliefs, we don't know their thoughts. All we know is the gadget, we take it and use it, but we don't know their ultimate feeling about them. Some of the people that do create these things don't even give them to their children, because they understand the damaging forces behind of what they're giving to the public. It's the same thing when it comes to leaders of philosophy or religion. The exact same thing. We're sitting and we're listening to pastor so and so, to biologist so and so, to evolutionist so and so, but and we're taking them and their word to be what it is, but we have no idea that in the background, these people are doubting themselves, what they believe, and the methods by which they're arriving at the things that they're saying. So in that world, a normal person won't know that world, but somebody in that world would be able to articulate the tragedy that it is, that the people that we hold pastor so and so as being strong, they're actually the ones that are fumbling around in their own belief.
Why is none of this stuff being mentioned?
I couldn't tell you. But for me, I put it out there as decent as I can and as respectful as I can. And especially when people reach out to me, I have a greater chance of sharing these things with them on a face-to-face or one-to-one basis, because then it's an intimate session or intimate setting where it's not just about hearing conspiracy or hearing lifestyle. It's about growing from what lifestyle and conspiracy are supposedly saying, and getting down to the fact of what the words are in the Bible are saying. So it's out there. There's not, I don't know if there's anybody saying, but I'm putting that out there as much as I can and as I'm able.
We definitely going to have to do a part two, because I'm sure there's a whole lot more that needs to be said. Yeah, but we're gonna have to cut this one.
Yep, for
Yeah,
sure.
it's been an hour, so there definitely needs to be a part two. I kind of want to hear more of, so I know there's a lot of things that you have not pointed out. So
Yep.
we're going to have a part two.
Okay.
But before we close, um, real quick, just kind of give us a rundown of some of the books that you have written,
Yeah.
and how people would be able to contact you.
Yeah. My 2021 justification. I actually have a show on a religious network, on Preach the Word Network, called Justification. It's been running since December 21. That show is based on my book, which is a book basically on how we can refresh our confidence in the living God according to the scriptures, and how we can maintain that refreshing in our lifestyle, as difficult as it is to put into practice and to build up that type of character. The need for our human being to take that risk, to go through that feeling lost, um, feeling that we're not heard, or just going through that experience to develop a solid basis for our human being and for our devotional character. That's the book Justification. My first book was along the same lines of perfecting and reforming personal religion, where I'm taking different wisdom within the Bible and placing it in the context of it being our diet, the diet of our thoughts, the diet of our feelings, and taking that and understanding that as much as a religion or traditional religion is made to be community orientated, the Bible allows us to know that it is what is within the personal aspect of our growth and development, spiritually or devotionally, that matters. And all of my books are along the line of that same thing. You can find them on Amazon. You can find them on my website, linwoodjacksonjr.com. Just type my name into any search engine, Linwood Jackson Jr., and full slew will pop up.
Well, I mean, that's some deep stuff.
It
I,
is.
I can't thank you enough for coming on here and sharing this. You you gave me some things to think about too. Then
As did you. Yeah, this was pretty very refreshing.
yeah,
And for your audience, whoever's listening right now, take what you think you know and refresh it. Take what you think you know and bring it to the words. Don't just assume that you know because of what's been told or because it makes sense to you. Don't just nod your head to the beat, but bring what you know to the words and let the words read you instead of you reading the words.
well, I certainly thank you for taking time out to be here this evening. I'm at a loss of words. We definitely need to bring you back on here for a part two. And I don't know if you like do any type of speaking engagements, or anything. Are you sure you're not a preacher or something?
I don't know. I don't feel like, I just feel like I'm just doing what needs to be done.
Because I mean, you really tapping into some of the mysteries of God that he vaguely talks about that we really don't understand.
Appreciate it.
Uh, because we're so consumed about living your best life now. No one is really talking about you know not only the deeper things of God, but the eternal
Mm,
God,
thank you.
eternity. Everything goes back to eternity. Well, we're talking about living our best life now. We're not thinking about eternity, you know, and I'm not surprised because the Bible warns us that this was going to happen. Bible also warns that we're not going to adhere to sound doctrine, that we're going to be lovers as ourselves. And like I said earlier, can you have a relationship with someone that you really don't know?
True.
The question is, do we really know who God is?
That's the
Now, don't get me,
question.
we're not going to know everything. I don't
But
think
that's the
that
right
God is,
question.
yeah, I don't think that God is going to reveal everything. I mean, the whole enchilada, about himself, because we're not going to be able to handle it. I mean, you notice, when Moses, met God in a burning bush, I'm surprised that he ain't dropped dead.
Close enough, fell to his face.
Yeah. So that, yeah. So, that just come to show just how, graceful, he was. 'Cause I don't, and then he went up to the mountain to actually meet him face to face. And, he couldn't really see his face. So, God had his back, towards him, because if he would have seen God in all his splendor, and glory, he wouldn't be able to handle that, and I think that if we're to know everything, I mean, 100%, our brain, our body won't be able to, to handle it. But I think that, he wants us to go a little deeper, spiritually and philosophically,
For sure.
than what we have been taught, because what we have been taught is completely westernized. I
For
mean,
sure.
sure, it has some of that biblical essence or whatever you want to call it, but it's been westernized a lot. That's why you got all these different denominations. So everybody has something different that probably don't have anything to do with what you've been talking about. So I think we have to get back to that. So there's going to be a part two. So I'm sure you'll have plenty of more time, to talk about this. I'll get with you to
Yeah.
so that we do another a part two. 'Cause I'm quite sure you have a lot more, to say, but we are definitely out of time here. Is I
Okay.
want to thank everyone for uh, tuning in. I mean, and I'm just gonna leave on that note. Y'all have a good one.